This is Barry. Barry has no food, no proper tools, no farm, and barely any idea of what he's doing. But somehow, he is about to build a home, hunt bears, smelt copper, forge tools, and plant crops. The problem is that before any of that can happen, Barry has to stop starving long enough to survive the first few nights. Welcome to Barry Bluebeard's adventure. First things first, let's find some flint and make a tool. I think a spear is what I'm going to go with for the beginning, just because I want to be a little bit more safe. And right next to this is actually copper. That's great and all, but we don't really have a way to mine it. So, for right now, we have to start going back towards the basics instead of focusing on that. We also managed to discover a spooky rift, some borax, and we start to gather some cattails. None of these moments feel like progress on their own, but they start giving Barry some options. And options are important when your main strategy is currently run around and hope nothing gets you. And we somehow managed to find more copper. We're gonna have to start really going back to the basics here. Let's try getting warm. Making a fire doesn't feel like a major achievement, but when the temperature starts dropping, that's when fire becomes the difference between continuing the playthrough and freezing. So, let's jump ahead a little bit more, and oh hey, we found our first trader. And this trader has something even more valuable than a shop, a bed. So that means Barry can spend the night and use someone else's bed, because apparently building a house is still lower on the priority list than not dying. After that, it's time to gather clay. Clay is one of those resources that looks completely ordinary until you realize how much of your future depends on it. We also find lead, start building a cellar, and eventually finish it. The cellar gives us somewhere to store supplies, which is useful because at this point, every item feels important. But storage doesn't solve the biggest problem. We're still running out of food. So, Barry heads out on an adventure, not for treasure, not for raw materials, but because his stomach is empty. That is the mood of the early game. Every expedition has a goal, but underneath that goal is the same question. Can Barry scavenge enough food to eventually start progressing? Fortunately, Barry finds some horsetails. They might not look exciting, but these are healing items. They're extremely important when the world starts to fight back. We also find some more copper nuggets and our first bit of ruins. Ruins are a reminder that Barry isn't the first person to struggle in this world. Other people were here before us, built things, left things behind, and somehow still managed to disappear. Then we start collecting peat for our pit kilns. This is where survival slowly turns into preparation. We are no longer asking, what can keep me alive today? Now we are asking, what do I need to build the next stage of my life? We find another trader, but the biggest breakthrough is the first hunt. It takes time to get comfortable hunting in this game, especially when everything feels dangerous and your equipment is terrible. But eventually, Barry brings down the animal. And then comes the real reward. The first bit of cooked meat. This is not just dinner. This is stability. For the first time, Barry has food that feels earned. Food that came from preparation instead of panic. And food that might actually keep him alive for more than 5 minutes. It's a small meal, but it feels like his first real victory. And with food in hand, it's time to return to clay forming. This is the part of the game where progress begins to look less like adventuring and more like preparing for an extremely complicated outdoor kitchen. We get to the Pit Kilns, and we grass them up and start preparing the fuel needed for the fire. Of course, this is the exact moment when a vile beast decides to appear while Barry is simply trying to mow the lawn. That's one of the biggest things about this world. You can be doing something completely harmless like clearing grass, and suddenly the entire situation becomes a survival encounter. So, while the kilns are being prepared, Barry begins cutting down trees. A lot of trees. This is the beginning of deforestation, and it's not glamorous work. It's repetitive. It takes time, and every trip back home seems to create another resource that we desperately need. But this is what the early game is about. The exciting moments are made possible by a long list of boring jobs. The copper doesn't smelt itself after all. The food doesn't cook itself. And the charcoal definitely doesn't gather itself. Then, Barry gets hungry again, so we go adventuring again. This is becoming a pattern. Every time we make progress, hunger pulls us away from the base and forces us to search for more food. During one of these trips, we find a scythe inside of a pot. This is a great find, but it also creates another problem. Now we have more equipment that needs a proper use. Until then, Barry survives off mushrooms. Not because mushrooms are a particularly exciting food source, but because they are available, and Barry has no standards left. Then we find berries, and Barry likes berries. This is one of the few moments in the early game where food feels less like a desperate emergency and more like something we can actually enjoy. We also spot some limestone, gather more resources, and finally return home to drop off some loot. That trip may not look like much in the final edit, but it represents the entire rhythm of the early game. Leave home hungry, search the wilderness, find anything edible, gather whatever resources are nearby, and try not to get killed. Return home, and repeat. Now we can finally start making charcoal. The charcoal pit is another one of those projects that looks simple when it's finished, but takes a surprising amount of work to prepare. We build it, start filling it, and continue cutting down trees to keep the whole operation running. Then we meet our first drifter. This is the moment where the world stops feeling dangerous in theory and starts feeling dangerous in practice. The drifter encounter is exactly why the horsetails matter. Healing isn't something you keep because it looks nice in a chest. You keep it because eventually something will come out of the darkness, just to remind you that being prepared is better than being confident. After some more deforestation, the charcoal pit is finally complete. We can light it. And once the charcoal is going, we can light the pit kilns too. This is the turning point. For the first time, Barry isn't just collecting random resources and trying to stay alive until morning. He is creating an actual production chain. Wood becomes charcoal, clay becomes useful items, and useful items lead to better tools. Better tools lead to copper, and copper is the first real doorway into the next age. There is still plenty of work to do, so Barry heads out adventuring again. More berries are collected because Barry has apparently decided that berries are now a major part of the economy. We find double rapids and continue exploring the area. Eventually, we set up a bear trap. This is a dangerous plan, but it works. Bear comes falling down. That gives us valuable materials, but it also leaves Barry needing a moment to recover from the experience. So we return home, reorganize everything, and add a new piece of furniture. Oh, and we also gather the charcoal. These may seem like small details, but this is the first time the base begins to feel like a home instead of a temporary emergency shelter. The cellar is finished, the fuel is ready. The food situation is not perfect, but it's improving. And now at last, we have enough preparation to attempt something bigger. We acquire all of the molds. Then we begin smelting copper, and immediately, we realize we need tongs. That pretty much sums up the Copper Age and Vintage story. You prepare for one step, reach that step, and discover 3 more things you forgot to make. But this time, the preparation pays off. The copper starts to take shape, and then it happens. The Copper Age. After everything Barry has been through, this moment feels enormous. Not because the game suddenly becomes easy, but because we finally have proof that all the struggling mattered. The cold, the hunger, the mushrooms, the berries, the bears, the charcoal, the clay, and the endless trips away from home all led to this. We oil the bear hide and make a copper pick and hammer. Then we find a flint deposit and mine our first bit of glorious copper. This is the moment when copper stops being a resource sitting in the ground and becomes something Barry can actually use. The tools are not just stronger equipment. They're evidence of survival. Barry started with one basic tool and no reliable food. And now he's entered a new age. And the first thing we do with that progress is go back out and fight another bear. Because apparently the Copper Age does not come with common sense. Another bear is taken down, and then we begin searching for granite. We need it for a quern, which means even after reaching the Copper Age, Barry still has to travel through the wilderness looking for the next piece of the puzzle. Along the way, we meet Horace. Horace is an exemplary fellow. He's a treasure hunter, and that will be important for later down the line. However, we finally got granite acquired, and Barry returns home. Welcome home. This time, returning home feels a little different. Before coming back meant escaping danger and putting away whatever food we managed to find. Now we are bringing back materials that will directly expand what Barry can do. The forge is acquired. We find a big copper deposit. Then it is anvil time. The anvil is finally acquired, and suddenly the world opens up again. This is why the Copper Age feels like such an achievement. The milestone is not only the moment where the game labels you as Copper Age. The real reward is everything that becomes possible afterward. With the forge running, we begin making proper tools. A saw, a chisel, a prospecting pick, and then we create some tools and immediately we have Noopsy. God damn it, Barry! So the chisel has to be remade. Progress is rarely clean. Usually it involves making something, breaking something, realizing you made the wrong thing, and then making it again. We also have a falx blade and begin creating chests. The base is becoming more organized, but the biggest project is still ahead. We require a farm. We start making farmland, but quickly discover that we need dirt. And then we need more dirt. And then when the farm is nearly finished, we need even more dirt. At some point, Barry spots a dead wolf and discovers a whoopee thingy because apparently even a farming episode needs at least one strange mystery. Eventually, the dirt is finally finished. We fence everything off, make 6 hoes, and spend a grueling night preparing the fields. The tilling is finally complete, and then Barry starts planting crops in the most random locations possible. It's not the perfect farm, it's not an organized farm, it may not even be efficient, but it's ours. After spending the entire early game searching for food, Barry has finally created a way to produce it. We still find the need for more crops, and there's obviously much more work to do. But that is for a different day. For now, the important thing is that Barry survived long enough to build a future. Barry started this world with nothing. One basic tool, no food, no shelter, no idea how far the journey would go. He survived the cold, the hunger, the drifters, the bears, and the endless resource runs. He reached the Copper Age, built better tools, forged an anvil, and finally planted the first crops. The farm is rough. The food supply is still a work in progress. But after everything Barry went through, even this messy field feels like an achievement. If you've enjoyed watching Barry struggle his way through the early game, leave a comment with the moment that you felt like was the biggest victory. And if you want to see what happens next, subscribe for the next part. Thank you for watching.